and welcome to All People's Church, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Michael Zepeda, and I will be co-celebrant for this morning's service. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. If you're a visitor today and haven't signed in, please do so. There's a table, visitor's table by the front door, and signing in will give us the opportunity to acknowledge your visit and place you on our mailing list to receive the weekly emails and our monthly newsletter. Our pulpit today is graced by Reverend Lori King Nelson. Lori holds a Master of Divinity from Bright Divinity School at TCU, and we are blessed by her affinity with Unitarianism. Lori, we are always welcoming of the expression of your calling here with us, and so grateful for the inspiration we receive in your sharing. Before we continue with our service, please note these reminders and announcements. David Bindi has set, there is a small card table with blue cloth in the foyer. There are a number of orchids that need to find a new home. Feel free to take one with you as you leave today. And we have a message from Joe regarding, don't forget to feed me. Joe. You're welcome.
So last time I wasn't baby, but this time I am. Don't forget to feed me, as you all know, is an amazing organization that helps people keep their pets by giving food to the food banks, and they can go and collect it once a week, no question asked. And homeless people also benefit. If you have a dollar or two, every dollar helps, and we appreciate it so much. And thank you from me, and don't forget to feed me, and all the animals and families and elderly and children. Bless you.
Thank you, Joe. Opening words.
Thank you, Josh. It's hard to see you through this plant, so I'm going to move back. It is just such a gift to have you and your music gracing our services. Thank you so much. We are centered in the promise of love, caught in the web of love, spun in a dance of love, and woven into a fabric of love, one being inseparable from another.
Advise you to rise and body your spirit for the chalice lighting, the opening hymn, and our spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words are from Jennifer Grayson. We come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. Our opening hymn is our hymn of the month for July. It's number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. You'll find it in the gray hymnals. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. The young and the young at heart are now invited to come forward here at the front of the chancel for the story for all ages.
I know that there are some people younger than us here because I saw them. So I'm going to give them just a minute to maybe make their way here. Okay, they may be busy. So, what I was going to talk with our young people about, excuse me, is about covenanting with someone. And with me coming in as a minister of this church, I wanted to talk with them about how important they are going to be to me. That every one of their lives is important. Everything they think is important. And I wanted to let them know that I am going to schedule a special time for any of them to come into the office and speak with me about whatever is on their mind. I want to covenant with them to let them know that I believe in their importance and their worth and their value. And I want to also covenant with them that in the same way that I will help them grow, I want them to help me grow as well. So it's real important that we have this covenant, these covenants with one another. I mean, we say it every week. This we do covenant with one another. And there's a reason for it. It's because we have to have an agreement that goes both ways. So, even if you are not one of the younger and you're just the young at heart, there will be time set aside for you too. So let's not sing our youthfulness out, but we can sing our youth out. Okay? Our reading today is The Ties That Bind Us by Andrew Blitman. What is the chain that binds us together? The links invisible that intertwine our simple lives into complex webs of experiences that are, were, and are yet to have been. Why do instinct and intuition merge when we interact with other people? The friends and strange faces, familiar as the stars of the sky that form the solar systems in our hearts? Are we engraved in each other's souls as soulmates and soul ties that are omnipresent and everlasting? Who makes us individuals whole? We are all in relationships with each other in one way or another. Genesis and genetics are the beginning. The family of God and mankind, as birds of the same feather, flocking in synchronicity with all creation forever. Love is the chain that binds us. With fervor and happiness and joy a must. It is the introduction that explodes on stage, the fire starter that blazes bright after the denouement in a climactic display that brings life to new heights, pushing away the depths in favor of the lights that bring to the surface the beauty hidden by our misconceptions of ourselves. Who are we to label the chain of love as shackles? Is it really servitude if the service is beneficial and voluntary? Nay, that chain is the only thing that is both true and fundamental, never false or forced or judgmental. It is honest and sincere and unwavering. It never fails or quits. We can never have enough of it. Let the chain of love bind every nation, link us to each other by its rings of mutual respect and admiration. May it leave us open to renewal on every level. For love is the only force that breaks our bondage to the falsehoods in our way. It is the light of the world that reigns in peace as the gentle yoke of responsibility that sets us free.
The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. Each Sunday, we take half of the non-dedicated cash offering that is received and share it with a local organization whose values and goals reflect our own. This quarter, we are supporting Eastside Ministries, also known as Eastside Community Resources. Please give generously. If you prefer, donations can be made using the QR code that is now included on the back of the order of service. The gifts of the congregation will be gratefully received, and will the ushers please come forward. Thank you, Josh. We gather as a house of stories, many stories woven fine. As we listen to the tales of those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes more clear. As we make space for voices long silenced, all of us become more free. As we hear the accounts of those who made it through the dark, courage reigns on each and every one. These stories, friends, I need yours as you need mine. It is how we become whole. Yes, we gather as a house of many stories. Come, let us listen once again. Each week, there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope before the service. We honor these messages by lighting 3 candles here next to our chalice. Also, at any time during our service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center at this side of the chancel. In our book of memory and hope this morning, we have been asked to remember Dr. Ruth Westheimer, Richard Simmons, Shannon Doherty, and Shelley Duvall, who have all made an impact on the culture of America and who all passed this week. Please keep their families and their friends and their fans in your thoughts. We pause at this time to hold and to honor the sorrows and celebrations among us, including those deeply felt but have remained unspoken. Let us pause for a moment of silent meditation, and then Josh will lift our hearts with music.
Thank you, Josh. We're going to mix things up just a little bit because we skipped the hymn, and I want to go back to it because so Josh, would you lead us in hymn 323, Break Not the Circle, and rise as you are able. See, he has to go backwards too. Yeah. Thank you, Josh, for your flexibility in that. We have to pivot a lot in life, don't we? Yeah. It's good practice to do it here among loving people. So June was not a great month for Supreme Court decisions, U.S. or Texas. Not a great month for presidential debates. I feel that the 99% lost so much in June. I lost some heart, for sure. When NPR reported the Texas Supreme Court had upheld the ban on gender-affirming care, everyone in my car let out a deep sigh. I'll admit, I came home, closed my bedroom door behind me, and sat down and wept. I probably sat there for 30 minutes, wiping away new waves of tears as I thought of the many ways this would impact our young people who are struggling every single day, every minute of every day, just to stay alive. I pulled myself together, took a deep breath, and began answering texts from parents whose trans children are the target of this ban. How will we access health care? What will happen to our insurance coverage for counseling? And most importantly, how do I talk to my trans child about this decision? The last question was the only one I could immediately answer. Talk to them with honesty and love. Tell them we'll figure this out together. Then they overturned the Chevron doctrine, leaving us with less protections for safety standards in the auto industry, less environmental protections, less protections for our own public health and safety. The list is lengthy and leaves humans and the environment vulnerable to the destruction brought by big business. Capitalism, it wins out nearly every time. And how could it not? Capitalism is led by love of money and power. There's so much money to be made when regulations don't get in the way. And when the Supreme Court kicks these decisions back down to oversight agencies, that evens the playing field for big business. Someone told me I was overreacting to the SCOTUS decision. They said that people normally make the right decisions when it comes to environmental and human rights. Just wait and see, they said. Then came the SCOTUS ruling that cities and states have the right to fine and incarcerate people for being homeless. Criminalizing homelessness. Criminalizing a situation a human being has no control over. Those ordinances, Justice Gorsuch wrote, did not criminalize the homeless, but rather the act of camping outdoors. He said, "It makes no difference whether the charged defendant is currently a person experiencing homelessness, a backpacker on vacation, or a student who abandons his dorm room to camp out in protest on the lawns of a municipal building." Well, I'm not seeing a lot of backpackers on vacation sleeping on the lawns of municipal buildings, but I guess Gorsuch felt he could hide his true agenda by throwing that in. A news pundit wrote that this is a decision made for the welfare of those on the street. It's just not safe for them out there, he said. So, it's about love. The debate, the blacks and the black jobs, Project 2025, the largest deportation ever seen, the Human Life Protection Act that has left pregnant persons and their physicians in fear of civil wrongful death lawsuits and criminal prosecution for murder if they medically intervene in a pregnancy from conception to birth. A law so intentionally vague that maternal and infant mortality rates have risen by 8% since it was signed into law. So intentionally vague that physicians are left wondering when the line between life-saving measures and criminal abortion have been crossed. Remember that person I mentioned earlier? The one that said regulation is unnecessary because people normally make the right decisions, just wait and see? Well, we have waited. And what we are seeing are not loving responses to injustice. We've had so many starts and stops in our efforts to create a just and equitable world. Teddy Roosevelt, for all of his shortcomings, understood the value and beauty of the environment, creating the first protected natural spaces. Yet, while we have continued to protect those spaces, we have also monetized and destroyed so much more. The destruction of sacred lands and irreplaceable ecosystems isn't something we should ever stop caring about or fighting against. Not if we believe in justice. We fought a war against our own people in order to end the enslavement of generations of humans, only to continue enslaving them to poverty, prisons, and denial of basic human rights. Freedom doesn't always mean someone is free, and we should never stop caring about or fighting against institutionalized racism. Not if we believe in justice and equity. FDR signed into law a package of rather socialist programs that served as a safety net for Americans, or should I say, some Americans. White Christian America could count on government payments for disability, unemployment, retirement, and death. After some starts and stops, this was expanded in the 50s and 60s to include other Americans. Though by that time, the economic gap between white Americans and everyone else was nearly incomprehensible. Just because we have programs doesn't mean they are equally distributed, and we should never stop caring about or fighting against discrimination. Not if we believe in justice, equity, and pluralism. Women's rights, they've had their own starts and stops. In 1980, women had to have their husband's written consent to have a tubal ligation. It had only been a few years since women were allowed to apply for credit without their husband's permission and signature. And we seem to be backpedaling. Women today have less rights than I did in 1974. And if you're wondering to yourself why that is, then I'm glad you're here for the conversation today. Because we really need to talk about the fact that feminism is human rights. Your rights and my rights and the rights of our neighbors here and in other countries. And we should never stop caring about or fighting against sexism. Not if we believe in justice, equity, pluralism, and interdependence. We knew in the 1950s that human activity was driving climate change. We actually knew that in the 1800s, but it was confirmed by scientists who were hired by Exxon in the 1950s to disprove the human connection to climate change. But oops, the research showed an irrefutable connection between fossil fuels and impending climate crisis. Activists worked against the odds to stand up to big oil and gas, all while big oil and gas was burying the research and keeping hundreds of law firms on retainer. Law firms, hundreds. No matter how many lawsuits are brought against them, they continue to pollute our air, our water, our land, our bodies. But we cannot stop caring about or fighting against human-driven climate change. Not if we believe in justice, equity, pluralism, interdependence, and transformation. Maybe the most difficult starts and stops have been within the equal rights movement in the queer community. Leaving transgender people fighting for their literal lives, while gay, lesbian, and bisexual persons were eventually able to find some semblance of equality, but not without living under the threat of losing the rights they worked so long and hard to gain. It is exhausting and traumatizing to have to fight for every scrap of rights others take for granted. The ACLU is currently following 527 anti-LGBTQ bills in the 2024 legislative session, and it is up to all of us to share our faith, our presence, and our resources to defeat these deadly bills. We cannot stop caring about or fighting against transphobia. Not if we believe in justice, equity, pluralism, interdependence, transformation, and generosity. You see my theme. So what do we do when the shelters are full or non-existent? How do we push state and municipal governments to address the root causes of homelessness? How do we suggest criminalizing the lack of affordable housing? What do we do when corporations can leverage power to change laws, benefiting big business at the expense of our environment, our public health and safety, our protections as consumers? How do we suggest criminalizing corporations attempting to influence law? What do we do when a Human Life Protection Act costs lives? What do we do when a stacked and corrupt court dismantles protections for our democracy? What do we do when Black people continue to be murdered in our streets and jails by law enforcement officers who face little or no consequences? What do we do when gender-affirming care is denied and life becomes unlivable for our young people? How do we suggest criminalizing governmental actions that cost lives and freedom? Is that what's needed? I know it's tempting to try to make everything even Steven, but the fate of a handful of high-profile men is not what matters most, and punishment is not how we remake the world. So what do we do? Well, we stand up and we lead with love. Love is the connective tissue that binds us one to another, making us willing to stand together for the rights and freedoms for everyone. You know, right here, it says, love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Rebecca Solnit says, feminism is a human rights movement that endeavors to change things that are not just centuries, but in many cases, millennia old. And that it is far from done and faces setbacks and resistance is neither shocking nor reason to stop. Feminism will always be part of the human rights movement because you can take away a right through legal means, but it is harder to take away the belief in that right. We stand together to keep those beliefs alive. I want us to have these conversations about our responsibilities and obligations to one another. And I want us to all feel safe doing so. The conversations are about violence and inequality, about the intersectionalities of race and gender, about the rethinking of gender beyond the simplest binaries, about what freedom could look like, what desire could be, what equality would mean. Just to have those conversations is liberatory. To see younger people reach beyond what my generation perceived and claimed is exhilarating. These conversations change us in ways the law cannot. Makes us understand ourselves and each other in new ways. Reconceive race, gender, sexuality, and possibility. These conversations are only a jumping on point, though. Something that helps to guide us to the meaningful work each of us must do. This is where I share with you my vision for contemplation that leads to conversation, that leads to action. It's homework, yes. But it's also who you are supposed to be and what you believe as Unitarian Universalists. You know the saying, faith without works is dead. So are our shared values. We have to live them. We have to make them verbs. So I want to ask each of you to do something. I want to task you with choosing a value, contemplating its meaning and connection to love, And you can see them all around. We handed them out last week, and I hope everybody still has access to one. If not, you can go on the UUA website and find your own. But I want you to consider a way to put this value into action in some way that is possible for your circumstances. Then I want you to bring that conversation to me, and we can share our ideas for action. Of course, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Drop me an email. Make it anonymous. Drop me a note. Sit down with me in person. Bring people with you. Whatever is best for you. The important thing is giving thought and taking action. I'm ready to start the conversation, and I hope you are too. I want you to know that I lit a candle for the millions of people impacted by the recent decisions of a few. I lit another for those who believe in justice, equity, pluralism, interdependence, transformation, and generosity. Then I moved them toward one another until they were touching, side by side, as one. May the power of our love lead us there. Will you join us in the closing hymn, number 354, We Laugh, We Cry.
We extinguish our chalice with words from Krista Taves. It is our work, shared with each other in covenant, that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us, together in our minds, our hearts, our bodies, and our spirits. Amen, and blessed be.
May love always be the connective tissue that binds us in all we do. And may all we do be worthy of the values we share with one another. Service has now ended. We invite you to join us for coffee and conversation in the library.